Estate disputes and prenuptial agreements. Opening remarks from Charles Wagner.
Good morning, everybody. If you're standing in line for breakfast, keep going. We're not starting the program quite yet. I just want to do some housekeeping before we start. My name is Charles Wagner, and I wanted to welcome you here on behalf of the B'nai B'rith Estates and Trusts Group Lawyers Division. It's the 10th annual CLE program that we're running, and as part of the housekeeping, I wanted to review the binder that you all received. If you open the binder up, you'll see there is a young-looking lawyer flash key, where if you open it up, you'll find all the documents in the binder on the flash key. Some people prefer an electronic format, and hopefully that'll be of some use to you. If you open up the binders, you'll see that this is a CPT-accredited program, and you'll see the schedule of events. The first tab is the biographies of the presenters. We're not going to spend a lot of time giving individual introductions because time is short, but suffice to say that you have some of the best and brightest people in the profession today who are presenting. The second tab is an agreed statement of facts. It might, before the event starts, it might pay to take a few minutes to go through the agreed statement of facts, which is something that litigators often look to in order to short-circuit some of the time you have to spend at trial. Judge Jordy will be going through the facts before we start, to give you a heads up. The next tab you'll see is an extra report delivered to one of the litigants' law firms. And it does an analysis and financial modeling for Mr. Richard Schmier, who's the applicant in the proceedings. When you're making an application for dependents relief, one of the factors that are taken into account in the legislation is what the health and the needs of the applicant will be. In tabs 4 and 5, you'll see the factums of the applicants and respondents. As litigators know, a factum is a concise statement of fact and law upon which the litigants are basing their case. And then there are numbers of articles that you see in paragraphs 6, 7, and 8. I want to bring your special attention to the subject matter of the articles. We're going to be covering a lot of the same issues that you're going to be covering in the moot court today. And now, without further ado, I just want to take a few seconds to say thank you. First, I want to thank John Clegg and Roxanne Tavanna, the Managing Director of Scotia Trust. Scotia has been a long-term supporter of B'nai B'rith in this event, and we could not do it without you. I also wanted to thank B'nai B'rith, its CEO, Michael Mostyn, and all the crew who are here every year and do a really fantastic job in helping us set this event up. I also want to make mention on the 10th anniversary of the former CEO of B'nai B'rith, Frank Diamond. He was supporting of this event even when we didn't have 150 people here, but we only had 10 people at one of the local kosher restaurants. I also wanted to take a few moments to thank the members of the committee who helped put this event together. We've been together for 10 years planning this. I'm mentioning Archie Rabinowitz, Ian Hull, Jordy Ayton. It's been a pleasure to work with you gentlemen on this committee for the past 10 years. I hope we can do so again for the next 10. And finally, I wanted to thank Catherine Tan. Catherine Tan is my office manager, and she's also the event coordinator. And many of the things that you see going on here today would not be able to do so if you didn't have people like Catherine, people like the people of B'nai B'rith helping us out. Jordy, are we ready to start?
Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Chuck. So, welcome to the Schmutta family. Sam and Yenta Schmutta have two kids, Zelda and Erwin. Fortunately for them, and they're very proud, that Erwin is a family law lawyer. Sam died in 2009, leaving Yenta as the sole beneficiary and sole estate trustee of his estate. His estate was a significant one. He had made his money in the Schmutta business, believe it or not. He owned a company called Schmutta Mart Holdings, and it was worth $4 million at the time of his death. He also had about $1 million in liquid and cash investments, and his home, which was jointly owned with Yenta, worth about $1 million, and his RIF, worth about $650,000. And Yenta was 65 years old when Sam died. So in 2009, February, Sam dies, and in July, Yenta decides that she's entitled to treat herself to a cruise, and she goes on a Mediterranean cruise in July and meets Richard Schmier. And Richard is 41 years old in 2009. And Yenta is immediately attracted to Richard, mostly because he is a former goalie in the European Professional Football League, which we would call soccer. And unfortunately, by 2009, he had retired, and he only had just over, close to $1.5 million of assets and a pension of about $80,000. So shortly after they meet in July of 2009, they set a date for their marriage in September the 4th, 2009. And it's going to take place at Casa Loma. And 2 hours before the wedding, Yenta's son, who's the family law lawyer, his name is Erwin, Erwin says to his mom, "Mom, unless you sign a prenup agreement with Richard, we're never going to accept this marriage." And he says, "By the way, I brought one with me." And it just turns out that one of Richard's close friends is a first-year lawyer, and he agrees to look over the agreement for Richard just before the wedding. And the agreement is pretty standard. It's got a standard release against Family Law Act claims, claims under the Succession Law Reform Act. It confirms that each party is satisfied with the information that they have received regarding the assets of the other, and confirms that they have independent legal advice. Now, the actual schedule outlining their financial assets is not completed. But there's a note in Erwin's file that says that Mom told him that Richard loves me and does not really care to know the extent of my assets. It's none of his business anyway. So shortly before they sign the ketubah, they sign the marriage agreement. And they get married on September the 4th, 2009. In February of 2010, so the next year, Richard is diagnosed with CTE, which is chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is now in the newspapers about concussion syndrome. And he suffers from an inability to concentrate and twitching and tremors. There's a medical opinion, there are two medical opinions, that one says that his life expectancy is shortened by 10 years, and the other says that it's not shortened at all, but they both agree that there's going to be an increased need for medical attention over his lifetime. So the two of them, Yenta and Richard, live together from 2009 to 2014, and they're spending quite freely. They spend about $500,000 a year, $250,000 each, but they do maintain a strict regime of separate property. However, because of Richard not having significant assets, in 2014 he's on the verge of bankruptcy. Yenta, on the other hand, has an increase in value of her assets. Her shares in Schmuttemart are now worth $8 million. Her liquid assets are now worth $2 million. Her home has increased by $5 million to $6 million in total, and her RIF is now doubled as well to $1.2 million. On November the 7th, 2014, she signs paperwork to transfer all her shares in the holding company in Schmuttemart to her kids. But she also understands that Richard's going to need money, so she buys a life insurance policy and names him as the sole beneficiary of $1 million. And she signs a will leaving everything to her 2 kids. Now, for the purposes of the trial, all of the parties agree that the will is perfectly valid. On April 1st, 2015, Richard and Yenta, who have not lost their love of cruising, go on another cruise. And on April 3rd, 2 days later, Yenta goes into cardiac arrest. And her last words to Richard, in front of several witnesses, are, and I quote, "Oy vey, I think I'm having a heart attack. I might not live to see another sunrise. Look in the safe in our cabin and you'll find the share certificates for Schmuttemart. The combination is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't care what the papers say. If I die on this cruise, I want you to have the company." And she dies minutes later. Richard's only assets are $1 million, where the $1 million in life insurance that he receives. Richard goes to see a lawyer, and he brings a claim to set aside the prenuptial agreement, to seek a declaration that he is a dependent and that he's entitled to support of $250,000 per year for the rest of his life, a declaration that the transfer of the shares to the children was invalid and a fraudulent conveyance, and lastly, that the statement by Yenta on the cruise just before death, what constituted a gift mortis causa, of the shares to Richard. Those are the facts that the parties have agreed on. I'm sure there'll be lots of facts that they don't agree on. That's where I come in.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you take a look to my left, you'll see that there's a screen set up. In short order, what you'll see is a rotating, a rotation of the profiles of our speakers and presenters today. I wanted to take just a few seconds as we say in Hebrew, hakarat tov, in an expression of appreciation to our speakers, and just tell you a little bit about them that really doesn't jump out from the profile. I'm starting in alphabetical order. First, I'd like to talk about Jordan Ayton. If you read his profile, you'll see that Lexpert rates Jordy as a top lawyer in the estates field, that he's a founder of IWE. Many of you have taken his classes at Osgood. You know that he is a frequent presenter in Chair at Step, but you may not know if you don't deal with Jordy on a constant basis what a gentleman he is, what a kind person he is, and what an excellent solicitor he is in estate planning. The next person who is going to be shortly a witness is a young lawyer by the name of Aryeh Bloom. Aryeh is at Whaley, Kim Whaley's office, and I have to tell you, I'm very impressed with this young man. He is not only a scholar in Limudei Kodesh, but he's a scholar in the law. And he is also, and I don't know if you'll hold this against him, a CPA. But I think that helps him a lot in his approach to law and in the way he learned analysis. One of our speakers today was one of our witnesses today was John Clegg. John, you know, is from Scotia Trust. And he's here as well with Roxana Tavana. Roxana, can you stand just for a sec? Okay. Without Scotia Trust, we wouldn't be able to do the seminar in the way we do it every year. And I want to thank you very much. It's very much appreciated. I know that when I came back to practice and I was looking for a solution for a problem, my friend and fifth cousin, Archie Rabinowitz, referred me to John. And for the young lawyers in the room, he's a good mentor to have. Corporate trustees play a very important role in our profession. in the estates bar. They're there to handle the clients that no executor wants to deal with and complicated situations. And it's very much appreciated your participation every year. The person you heard doing the cross-examination of Win Harvey was an associate of mine, Brendan Dobbin. I have to be very grateful that he, as a refugee from Blake's, came to join us at our office. He's a bright young lawyer, and I very much appreciate him. And one of the things people don't know about him is that he's a former journalist, which helps me a lot when we have to edit our papers. I was very impressed with Win Harvey today. I was referred to Win by Ian Hull. She did a great job for him. I heard a lot about her on the case that she did before, and I'm sure many of you will be giving her a shout too after today if you need, when you have a dependence relief claim. Ian Hull. What can you say about Ian Hull? Prolific author. What you may not know is that Ian always returns a phone call. And you think that's a silly thing to say, but when someone who's as busy as Ian Hull finds time at the end of his day to return your phone call, and it doesn't make a difference if you're a young associate who doesn't really know what he's doing yet, or an older gentleman who's dabbling and needs the help of a senior practitioner, Ian is a gentleman. He's not just a partner at one of the preeminent estate firms in the country. He's a gentleman. Jordan. I've had the privilege of litigating against Jordan Olbaum in a number of files. I always find he's on top of the file. He's at Schnur, Kirsch, Schnur, and Olbaum. And what many of you may not know is he opened up an office recently in Whitby, together with his partners. And I always find him a very hard-nosed but fair person to litigate against. Judy. Judy is my rescue partner here today. Judy Piafsky is a family law lawyer at Blaney's, and she pinched hit when our former speaker was unable to come and speak here today. She has a very special approach to family law. She has as Sharon Shore explained to me, she has the type, when you're in that sort of situation, when your world is crumbling around you, you need someone who can be both hard-nosed when she has to be and have the empathy that you need for a client. Archie Rabinowitz, my fifth cousin. What can you say about Archie Rabinowitz? Some unknown facts. How many people here know that Archie spells his last name incorrectly? Being his relative, and I know, where's Ralph Rabinowitz? Okay. The proper spelling of his last name is I-C-Z. You can ask him why he spells it incorrectly. It's his business. I guess I shouldn't really criticize him for it. But anyway, he is a prolific speaker and publisher. He's won the Award of Excellence from the Canadian Bar Association. And many of the cases that we all read about that are precedent-setting cases, he's been involved with. It could be the Captain estate. It could be the Asif. It could be dealing with Zimmerman and McMichael. He's a very prolific author and excellent litigator. Greg Sidlofsky is my partner. For my law firm, I can say one of the best things that ever happened was his willingness to join me as a partner. I think he raised the litigation IQ of the firm when he did so. He makes regular appearances both before the Superior Court, the Appellate Court. He's also been before the Supreme Court of Canada. Deb Stevens. What I say to the young people in my office is that when they grow up, I want them to grow up and be a lawyer like Deb Stevens. She's steel in a velvet glove. She knows the law. She's done a super job at Goddard, Gamagay, and Stevens, and as a children's lawyer, and before at Schnur, Kirsch, Stevens. And I believe Deb's daughter is here today, right? If you want to know what Deb looked like when she was someone just coming out of law school, just take a look at her daughter. Chuck Ticker is a good friend of mine, and he practices law up in the 905 region. He's a specialist in state litigation. He's been to the Court of Appeal. What many of you may not know is what an excellent mediator he is. Rabbi Mordechai Torchiner is someone who I consider a good friend and a good Rav. For this constituency, he's an important person to know. Why do I say that? Because here in this room, we service, many of us, a Jewish clientele, some of whom are Orthodox. And going before the courts in a secular system is something that they find difficult. And there are issues that overlap between religious and secular law, and I find it quite helpful often to reach out to Rabbi Torchiner on his perspective on this. He is the Rosh Kollel of the Beit Midrash of the Yeshiva University Torah Mitzion Midrash. I can never pronounce that correctly or get it all right, but I think he brings an invaluable resource to our profession. Lionel J. Tupman, you've seen him, he is my Oye man here today. He's done a great job. He is an associate at Whaley Estate Litigation. He's been before the Court of Appeal, the Superior Court of Justice, and he has a wide range of advocacy skills that do him good stead. Craig Vanderzee is a partner at Tork and Mains. Many of you will remember Craig's litigation history. He was with Goodman and Carr. He was with Hull and Hull. And I find him to be an excellent advocate and resource. I often call him when I need help on a file. Those are our speakers. You'll see their full resumes as they roll before us, and I'd like to continue now. Jordy, if we could go forward.
So, without further ado, well, with a little further ado,
for those who didn't notice, there's a herring station at the end over there, and I want to thank Jules Cronus and his law firm for sponsoring the herring station. The only thing I'll mention that, Jules, if you're going to do it next year, when you serve herring in a shul in the morning, you should be bringing some scotch. I also wanted to take the opportunity quickly to thank the other sponsors for the event today. That's, of course, Ian Hall of Hull and Hull, Kim Whaley's office, and Wagner Sidlofsky. So I'd ask the lawyers who are coming up first to sit at the tables, please.